standing in front of a mirror in a modern townhouse located in an upscale neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Anna Collins was smoothing out the wrinkles in her loose-fitting maternity dress. As her hand naturally touched her swollen belly, she smiled at the presence of the life slowly moving inside. At 7 months pregnant, her body sometimes felt heavy, but Anna's face radiated happiness. "Phone for you," her husband David said, poking his head out from his study, holding a cell phone. "It's your mother." A momentary shadow crossed Anna's expression. She took a deep breath and accepted the phone. "Hello, Mom." "Anna, I need to talk to you about your baby shower." Margaret's voice always carried a tone of command. "Rachel and I have changed the venue to someplace a bit more elegant. The Bloomfield Club is much more sophisticated than that cafe you chose. I've already made the reservation." Anna closed her eyes, trying to contain her emotions. "Mom, I've already signed a contract with Riverside Cafe. All my friends know the location." "Don't worry about the money. I'll pay the cancellation fee." Margaret interrupted her daughter. "And frankly, I think the dress you've chosen could be a bit more refined. Rachel found something lovely that she thinks would be perfect." David noticed the change in Anna's expression and placed his hand on her shoulder. Drawing strength from her husband's warm touch, she summoned her courage. "Mom, David and I have already decided everything. We'd like to have the baby shower our way." On the other end of the line, Anna could hear Margaret's breath catch. "You're always like this. Why won't you listen to our opinions?" "Poor Rachel." There she goes with Rachel again. Anna closed her eyes. Her sister, Rachel, had been diagnosed with infertility 5 years ago and had shown clear hostility toward Anna's pregnancy. Yet, her mother always took Rachel's side, treating Anna's pregnancy as if it were a betrayal of her sister. "Mom, I don't want to hurt Rachel, but this is a celebration for me and David's baby." "How selfish." Margaret's voice trembled with anger. "Don't you understand how much your sister is suffering? And yet here you are flaunting your happiness without a care." David took the phone from his wife and said in a calm but firm voice, "Margaret, that's enough. Anna needs to avoid stress right now. The baby shower will proceed as we've planned. If you don't want to attend, that's your choice." He ended the call and embraced his trembling wife. Years fell from Anna's eyes. "Why can't Mom love me?" she whispered, burying her face in David's chest. "It's not your fault," David said gently, rubbing her back. "Margaret and Rachel's problems are their own." Later that evening, Anna received a call from her father, Henry. In his usual quiet voice, he apologized for his wife's behavior. "Anna, I'm sorry about your mother's words. She's really just concerned about you." Anna gave a bitter smile. Her father always made excuses for her mother. Though kind and gentle, he had always been submissive to his wife, Margaret. And since Anna's childhood, he had turned a blind eye to the verbal abuse her mother heaped upon her. "It's okay, Dad. I'm used to it by now." "I'll definitely come to the party. I'll bring your mother and Rachel, too. I promise," Henry said. "They'll surely come around." Although Anna hoped her father's words would come true, she knew how unlikely that was. Since childhood, her mother had told her, "You're a disgrace to our family," while Rachel stared at her with resentful eyes, saying, "Why you and not me?" In such a home environment, Anna had desperately struggled to find her place. In high school, she had excelled academically and won scholarships. In college, she majored in real estate. After graduation, she immediately joined a luxury real estate company and, through talent and hard work, rose to the position of sales manager. Most importantly, she had met David, and through his unconditional love, she had come to believe that she too deserved happiness. David came into the living room and sat beside Anna. "Did you talk with your father?" Anna nodded. The usual. He says he'll bring Mom and Rachel. But don't worry. David took her hand. If they try to cause any trouble, I'll handle it right away. My job is to protect you and the baby. Anna gazed into her husband's sincere eyes, grateful for the miracle of meeting him. Yet deep inside, anxiety swirled about what was to come. She couldn't imagine her mother and sister quietly celebrating her happiness. She could only think they were plotting something. Still, she didn't give up hope. She believed that perhaps the baby would bring peace to the family. The day of the baby shower was a pleasant Sunday in May. Riverside Cafe had been specially decorated with pale pastel blue ribbons and balloons. The outdoor terrace featured a large pool with clear water sparkling in the sunlight. Anna's best friend, Chloe, who was coordinating the baby shower, was checking the final decorations. "Everything's perfect." Chloe held Anna's hand reassuringly. "You just need to relax and enjoy yourself." Anna smiled gratefully, but inwardly she was uneasy. As guests began to arrive, she kept watching the entrance. David came to her side and asked quietly, "Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm just worried about Mom and Rachel. If anything happens, tell me right away." He kissed her cheek. "This is your special day. I won't let anyone ruin it." Just as Anna was beginning to relax, a stir occurred at the entrance. Turning around, she saw Margaret, Henry, and Rachel coming in. Margaret was dressed in a flashy red dress, walking with an air of dignity, as if she were the guest of honor at this party. Beside her stood Henry in his usual modest attire, looking somewhat apologetic, and behind them was Rachel. Despite knowing her sister was pregnant, Rachel wore a tight, body-conscious dress, deliberately emphasizing her slim waist. A faint, ironic smile played on her face. "Congratulations, Anna," Rachel said in a syrupy voice. "It's so like you to have a party in such a casual place." Anna took a deep breath, trying to maintain her smile. "Thank you for coming, Rachel, and Dad and Mom, too." Margaret looked Anna's pregnant figure up and down and said in a low voice, "Couldn't you have chosen a larger size for that dress? Your belly is way too prominent." "Mom, this is a maternity dress. I am pregnant." Anna tried to stay calm. "Well, everyone knows that," Margaret said, deliberately raising her voice. "You were always a child who craved attention." Fortunately, Chloe intervened at that moment. "Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Bennet, Rachel, welcome. Would you like something to drink?" Saved by Chloe's quick thinking, Anna let out a small sigh of relief. David put his arm around her waist and guided her toward the other guests. On the surface, the party proceeded smoothly. Anna's colleagues and friends surrounded her, chatting excitedly about the baby and expectations for the birth. But in the corner of the room, Margaret was draining one glass of champagne after another, her gaze fixed on Anna. Rachel was being unnaturally kind to Anna's friends, but anyone sensitive would notice that her smile didn't reach her eyes. She deliberately engaged Anna's colleagues in conversation, spinning a fictional tale about how close we were before my sister got pregnant. "Anna has always loved children," Rachel was telling Anna's friend Emily. "She's more maternal than I am. You know, I've always prioritized my career." The truth was exactly the opposite. Rachel had declared since her student days that she would someday have a wonderful family, but was diagnosed with infertility after marriage. Meanwhile, Anna, while building her career, had loved the man she met and was naturally moving toward having a family. Chloe gathered everyone together and announced it was time for games. "Now we'll play Advice for the Mother-to-Be. We'll read cards with parenting advice written for Anna, and she'll try to guess who wrote each one." As the game progressed, Margaret's attitude became increasingly aggressive. She was now on her third glass of champagne, occasionally laughing loudly and inappropriately. Henry quietly grabbed his wife's elbow, trying to restrain her, but Margaret shook off his hand. I have some advice, too. Margaret suddenly stood up and walked unsteadily toward Anna. Children are born to take revenge on their parents. Now you'll get to experience all the trouble you caused me. The room fell silent. The color drained from Anna's face. David stood up and confronted Margaret. That's enough, Mrs. Bennet. Could you please be a little more restrained? At this point, Rachel moved to her mother's side and whispered something in her ear. Margaret's eyes blazed with anger, and she raised her voice further. Is that child really David's? The shocking words froze the room even more. Anna clutched her belly protectively with trembling hands. David's face reddened with anger, and he took a step toward Margaret. Leave now. You are no longer welcome here. Henry stood up and grabbed his wife's arm. Margaret, let's go home. You've had too much to drink. Let go of me. Margaret shook off her husband's hand. I still have more to say. The party was on the verge of collapse. Anna's friends were disturbed, exchanging confused glances. Chloe moved to Anna's side, trying to support her. It's okay, Anna. You've done nothing wrong. At that moment, Anna took a deep breath and stood up. For the first time in her life, she raised her voice firmly to her mother. Mom, please, just for today, let it be my day. A day to celebrate the baby. Her words silenced Margaret for a moment. In this brief moment of calm, David announced, It's time to open the gifts, trying to ease the tension. As time passed, the atmosphere in the venue gradually softened. Anna expressed gratitude for the heartfelt gifts from her friends, carefully handling each baby outfit, picture book, and toy. David sat beside her, occasionally placing his hand on her shoulder and smiling at her. This blanket was knitted by my grandmother, Emily explained. It's been passed down through generations. May it bring happiness to your baby, too. Anna held the soft blanket against her cheek, tears of emotion in her eyes. Thank you so much, Emily. I'll treasure it. Meanwhile, Margaret was by the window, draining another glass. Beside her, Rachel stood with her arms folded across her chest, watching Anna with a cold gaze. Their disgruntled presence hovered like a thin cloud over the venue, but at least for now, they weren't causing any further disruption. Chloe took the microphone and drew the guests' attention. Everyone, it's time to hear a few words of thanks from Anna. Anna slowly rose, supporting her large belly, and took the microphone from Chloe. She took a deep breath, smiled, and began to speak. Everyone, today But her words were cut short. Margaret suddenly stepped forward and snatched the microphone from Anna's hand. Her eyes were bloodshot with anger and drunkenness. Her face distorted. I have something to say, too. Margaret raised her voice. None of you know what kind of person my daughter really is. Mom, stop, Anna pleaded. David stood up and took his place beside his wife, but Margaret wouldn't stop. She gripped the microphone and cried out in a trembling voice, Why are you acting so happy when your sister can't have children? You don't deserve to have a baby. The venue fell into stunned silence. The guests were shocked into speechlessness, looking at each other's faces. All color drained from Anna's face, and she stood frozen. Rachel has been undergoing infertility treatment for 5 years. Margaret raised her voice even more. And yet you got pregnant without any struggle, and now you're showing off like this. Anna tried to respond with the trembling lips. Mom, I never meant to hurt Rachel. Liar. Margaret took a step toward her daughter. You've always had to be number one. Since you were little, always seeking attention, pushing Rachel into the shadows. From the edge of the room, Henry stood up and called out, "Margaret, that's enough." But his wife wouldn't listen. David stood between Margaret and his wife, saying in a resolute voice, "Stop this right now, or I'll call security." "Are you trying to take my daughter away from me?" Margaret spat at David. "You're just as guilty spoiling her and separating her from our family." Suddenly, Margaret shoved David aside and rushed toward Anna. Her eyes held a madness beyond reason. "You should never have been born!" With that cry, Margaret grabbed Anna's arm and pulled hard. Anna, heavy with child, lost her balance and cried out. A scuffle ensued between the two women while the guests watched, frozen in terror. As David tried to rush to them, he was stopped by Chloe. "David, quick! There's a man waiting outside about a delivery. Go check it out. It's urgent. It's about the cake." Chloe was desperate. David hesitated for a moment, but in the confusion, believed Chloe's words and hurried outside. Seizing that moment, Margaret grabbed Anna's shoulders and pushed her hard. Anna stepped backward, tripping on the edge of the pool. As her eyes widened in terror, Margaret gave one final push. 7 months pregnant, Anna completely lost her balance and fell into the pool. Her scream was submerged in water. Her dress absorbed water and became heavy, causing her to sink momentarily. "Anna!" the guests screamed. Henry was stunned, staring at his wife in disbelief. "Margaret, what have you done?" But most horrifying was Rachel's reaction. Standing at a distance, she watched her sister fall into the pool and slightly turned up the corner of her lips in a smile. Her eyes showed a terrible satisfaction. In the pool, Anna was struggling. Her heavy dress and large belly restricted her movements, and fear and shock confused her thoughts. She instinctively moved her hands, desperately fighting to keep her face above water. "Someone help! The baby!" she cried, gasping for breath. Just as Chloe and 2 male guests were about to jump into the pool, the entrance door burst open and David ran in. He understood the situation at a glance and jumped into the pool without hesitation. "Anna!" he shouted as he swam toward his wife. David's face showed pure fear and anger. When he reached Anna, he supported her body and guided her to the edge of the pool. 2 male guests reached out their hands and pulled Anna up first, then helped David out. Anna shivered and coughed in her husband's arms. Her dress was heavy with water, her hair clinging to her face, but her hands were instinctively placed protectively on her belly. "The baby. I wonder if it's okay," she whispered in a trembling voice. David embraced his wife, wiping water from her hair, saying, "It'll be fine. Let's go to the hospital right away." He looked up, searching for Margaret. She now stood in a corner of the room, her face pale, perhaps beginning to realize the gravity of what she had done. Rachel stood beside her, but her expression remained unchanged, even seeing her sister's condition. Then Henry appeared. His face showed an anger no one had ever seen before. The man who had always been mild-mannered and acquiescent to his wife now looked like a completely different person. "Margaret." His voice was low and dignified. "You've finally gone too far." He took his cell phone from his pocket and began dialing 911. "I'm calling the police and an ambulance. My daughter is in danger, and my wife deliberately pushed her into the pool." The color drained from Margaret's face. "Henry, what are you—" "Be quiet," Henry commanded his wife for the first time in his life. "If Anna isn't safe, you could be charged with a serious crime." He also gave Rachel a stern look. "And you're complicit, too. You didn't even try to stop your mother." Chloe brought towels and draped one over Anna's shoulders. She and David took Anna to a safe place in the room and sat her in a chair. Anna's face was pale, her lips trembling, but a new light shone in her eyes. Years of suppressed anger now mingled with protective instinct and blazed within her. "Enough is enough," Anna said in a small but firm voice. "I won't let you hurt me anymore, putting my baby in danger. I won't forgive that." In the hospital waiting room, David paced back and forth restlessly. An hour had passed since the ambulance had brought Anna in. His wet clothes hadn't completely dried yet, and his hair was still disheveled. "Will she be all right? The baby?" he muttered to himself. Chloe sat next to him, holding his trembling hand. "Anna is a strong woman. Let's believe that both of them are safe." Down the hall, two police officers were taking a statement from Henry. Nearby, Margaret sat with her head bowed, handcuffed. Her makeup was streaked with tears, and her former dignity was nowhere to be seen. Rachel was speaking with another officer, her expression hard and defensive. "It was an accident," Rachel desperately insisted. "Mother was drunk, but she didn't mean to hurt my sister." The officer replied calmly. "Multiple witnesses state that your mother intentionally pushed the victim. There are also testimonies that you made no attempt to stop her." "I was too shocked to move." "Then why do multiple witnesses state that you were smiling after the victim fell into the pool?" Rachel's face turned pale. At that moment, a doctor approached David. He immediately stood up, trying to read something in the doctor's expression. "Mr. Collins, your wife and the baby are stable," the doctor said with a warm smile. David sighed with relief. "Really? They're both okay?" "Yes. Fortunately, your wife wasn't in the water long and was immediately rescued. We'll keep her overnight for observation, but the baby's heartbeat is normal. However, I recommend she rest for a while, as the psychological shock was significant." "And can I see her?" "Of course. She's asking for you." David sent Chloe a grateful look and followed the doctor to the hospital room. Anna was lying in a white bed surrounded by monitors. Her face was pale, but when David entered, her eyes filled with warmth. "The baby is safe," she told her husband. "The doctor did an ultrasound. They let me hear the heartbeat." David sat beside her and enveloped her hand in both of his. "I can't forgive them for what they did to you." "Neither can I," Anna replied quietly. "I won't give them another chance to put me or our baby in danger." There was a knock at the door, and Henry cautiously peeked in. "May I come in?" David tensed, but Anna nodded. Henry entered the room with tired steps. His back was hunched, and he looked as if he had aged 10 years in one night. "Anna, I'm truly sorry." His voice trembled. "Your mom." "No, I'm just as guilty. I couldn't stop Margaret's rampages for decades." "Dad, no. Let me speak." Henry raised his hand. "I was a weak man. I followed my wife's will and pretended not to see you suffering. I couldn't protect you. That's my greatest regret." He took a deep breath and continued. "I told the police everything. Margaret will be detained tonight and appear in court tomorrow. She'll likely be charged with assault." "And Rachel?" Anna asked. "She's also being questioned. They say she might be an accomplice." Tears welled in Henry's eyes. "Today, for the first time in my life, I acted according to my own beliefs. I told the truth to protect my family." David placed his hand on his father-in-law's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Henry." 3 weeks later, Anna and David sat in a law firm's conference room. Henry sat across the table from them. His face showed determination. "This is the only thing I can do," Henry said as he signed the documents. Attorney Jeremy Clark gathered the papers and explained, "With this, Henry Bennett has officially consented to the restraining order against Margaret Bennett regarding Anna Collins. A similar restraining order against Rachel Bennett has also been approved." "What about the trial?" David asked. Margaret Bennett will likely receive a suspended sentence, considering it's her first offense and that her defense is arguing mental instability. However, she will be ordered to undergo counseling and perform community service for a certain period, and most importantly, she cannot come near you, the lawyer added. Henry looked at Anna. I'm planning to sell the mansion and move to Arizona. I want to start a new life. I've also begun divorce proceedings with Margaret. Dad? Anna said in surprise. No, this is my decision. It was a 40-year marriage. But looking back, there was hardly any happiness. Almost losing you made me realize what's truly important. He smiled. But don't worry. I'll come to see my grandchild, if you'll allow me. Anna nodded tearfully. Of course, Dad. That night, Anna and David sat quietly in their living room. Anna's belly had grown even larger, and she was gently stroking it. Sometimes I wonder, she said quietly, why did Mom hate me so much? David sat next to her and put his arm around her shoulder. That was something within her. It wasn't your fault. I know, but for a long time, I thought I must have done something wrong. Anna sighed. And Rachel's infertility problem. Maybe my pregnancy deepened her wounds even more. That doesn't give them the right to hurt you, David said firmly. Our baby should grow up surrounded by love, not hatred or jealousy. Anna nodded and leaned against her husband. Our future family will be different, and the family we create will be filled with love, David completed her sentence. I promise you that. A sense of a new beginning filled the entire room. Emma, come here. Daddy's waiting. Anna reached out to her 10-month-old daughter playing on a blanket in the garden. In the dappled sunlight, Emma's golden curls swayed in the breeze. She toddled toward her mother, almost falling several times, but finally leaped into her mother's arms. Well done! Anna lifted her daughter and kissed her cheek. David turned from the barbecue grill and waved with a smile. It'll be ready in a minute. Their new home in the Boston suburbs was filled with bright, open spaces. After the incident, they had decided to move for a fresh start. Leaving behind dark memories, they were building a warm home for their daughter. The doorbell rang, and Anna opened the door with her daughter in her arms. There stood Henry, his face tanned. Dad! Shonetcha welcomed him in. The Arizona sun is still intense, I see. Yes, but I'm quite used to it now, Henry laughed. He took out a small package and said, A present for Emma. Handing it to his granddaughter, Emma looked at the package with curious eyes, and with Anna's help, a small carved wooden horse appeared. I carved it myself, Henry said proudly. I've taken up woodworking since retirement, found a new hobby. As they moved to the living room, Anna asked while preparing coffee, How are Mom and Rachel? Henry's expression darkened slightly. Margaret just completed an addiction treatment program. She's trying to change too, but it will take time. He took a breath and continued message. Rachel is still in a difficult situation. She lost her job and hardly leaves the house. I keep in touch occasionally, but she's still not ready to face her problems. Anna gazed out the window. Last week I received a letter from Rachel. A letter? Henry asked, looking surprised. Yes, it contained an apology and a request for reconciliation. Anna smiled bitterly. But between the lines, I could see her ulterior motive, to re-enter my life. What are you going to do? Anna looked at her daughter and said, I won't reply, at least not now. I have a family to protect. I can't risk being hurt by them again for the sake of a false reconciliation. David came in from the terrace and placed his hand on Anna's shoulder. The food is ready. Everyone, let's go to the garden. As they stepped onto the terrace, Anna took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the spring air. You know what? She said, turning to David and Henry. I finally realized that true family isn't just about blood ties, but about people who respect, love, and support each other. Henry nodded as he picked up his granddaughter. That's right. Nearing the end of a long life, I finally realized that too. Around them, Anna's colleagues and friends were gathering. Chloe had arrived, and spotting Emma Russia did to her with a big smile. This was her real family, people bound by relationships based on love and respect. Let's make a toast. David raised his glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, everyone repeated. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of happiness and gratitude. She had come a long way, and now she knew her own worth and lived embraced by true love.